Having an affair can be a dangerous game, and those willing to play often find this out the hard way. Sometimes couples work out their infidelity, others decide it's just not something that they can overcome. Then, there are those that are stuck in a dark limbo, a place where they can channel their feelings of rage and jealousy, not into ending their own broken relationship, but ending someone else's life. This would become a terrifying reality for 20-year-old Heather Elvis after her torrid affair with 38-year-old Sydney Mora ended in the winter of 2013. Sydney Mora and his wife Tammy Mora are currently in prison for the kidnapping of Heather Elvis, but her body has never been found. A mountain of circumstantial evidence put the two behind bars, but is this enough? Is the crime truly solved? Let's find out. Heather Rochelle Elvis was born to parents Debbie and Terry on June 30th, 1993 in Carolina Forest, South Carolina. She was the middle child of 3 and had an older brother Christopher and younger sister Morgan. She grew up in Horry County, South Carolina, and graduated from St. James High School in 2011. Heather enjoyed animals and working with kids, and even volunteered at her local church. Heather was described as creative, someone that loved color and makeup. In fact, Heather wanted to be a cosmetologist, landing herself a makeup gig for weddings that was due to start late December of 2013. Prior to her disappearance, Heather was working 2 jobs, one at the House of Blues and the other at the Tilted Kilt in North Myrtle Beach. It was at the Tilted Kilt that she would meet Sydney Mora, a commercial equipment repairman. From all accounts, Heather was taken with Sydney right away and was not shy about expressing her feelings to her co-workers and even online, where in July 2013 she tweeted this. And also this interesting tweet. Heather and Sydney soon began a romantic relationship, despite the age difference or the fact that he was married with 2 children, and the pair did not do much to hide it from others. Heather's manager later testified to a conversation about the two having sex on the back patio of the restaurant, and several employees testified that Sydney would come to the Tilted Kilt on his days off to see Heather and bring her things. The affair only lasted a few months, ending in late September, and according to her best friend and roommate Brianna, Heather was devastated with the breakup. Tammy Mora found out about the affair in October after it had already ended, but it did not stop her from harassing Heather. Tammy would force Sydney to call Heather to degrade her, according to Brianna, and also sent her photos of she and Sydney having sex. She would also call the Tilted Kilt multiple times a day, threatening to keep Sydney from repairing their equipment if they continued to employ Heather, which resulted in Heather's hours being cut. Tammy and Sydney sent threatening messages to Heather. The messages show that even though she had been threatened, Heather still wanted to be with Sydney. Tammy also put restrictions on her husband, locking his phone with a passcode that only she knew, handcuffing him to the bed at night, and forcing him to get her name tattooed just above the belt line. Heather got a reprieve from the harassment by the couple in November when the Moras left for Disneyland for several weeks with their children. However, during that time, Heather was potentially facing a much bigger problem.
Had you ever seen her like that before?
No.
Had she ever come to work with any bruises on her?
Yes.
And when did that happen?
End of October, early November?
And was that the same time that they had broken up?
Yes, around the same time.
And had she ever come to work with any bruises before?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Now, during this time when she's working at Tilted Kilt and she's with the defendant, do you ever notice any changes in her physical appearance?
Yes.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell the jury about that.
Okay. I was in charge of the uniforms at Tilted Kilt, so their bra, their shrug, and their kilt were all provided by us. She had to change her bra out from a A cup to a B cup, and then later to a C cup, and also she needed a bigger kilt.
Okay. And what did she think was causing these physical changes?
At first, from the A cup to the B cup, she really wasn't thinking much, just that she gained some weight. But then she started to get concerned when she had to go to the C cup and get the kilt.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did she ever take any kind of pregnancy test?
She took one at Tilted Kilt in the restroom, yes.
Okay. And if you don't mind, did you see the pregnancy test?
I did.
Okay. And tell this jury what it said.
It said error, and I went into the office and looked up why a pregnancy test would say error, and it said that either it was inconclusive or she did not urinate on it enough.
Heather's pregnancy was never confirmed, and she continued to live her life, hanging with friends, moving into an apartment with Brianna, and even setting up a date with a new man. On the evening of December 17, 2013, Heather went out with Stephen Schiraldi to a Bandito's restaurant for dinner and then for a drive to see the Christmas lights in a local neighborhood. Before their date ended, Stephen took Heather to a mall parking lot where he taught her how to drive his truck, which was a stick shift, something that her father had trialed and failed to teach her previously. Heather's last message to her father, Terry, at 10:46 p.m. was a photo of her driving the vehicle and joking that she was a pro. Heather was dropped off at her apartment at approximately 1:30 a.m. She then called her friend Brianna, who was not in the apartment that night as she was visiting relatives in Florida. Brianna claims that Heather called her, very distraught after having spoken with Sydney just before at around 1:44 a.m. Although not able to give the details of their conversation in court, she told detectives that Heather explained that Sydney had asked Heather to meet him because he was leaving his wife and wanted to get back together.
How did she sound on the phone?
She was very upset.
Okay. And did you hear anybody in the background?
No, I did not.
And when you say very upset, was she crying?
She was hysterically crying.
And was this a very long conversation that you had with her?
No, it was not.
Okay. And at the time, to your knowledge, you know where she was?
I was told she was at home.
Now, you can't tell me what she said, but what did you say to her in response to what she told you?
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the basis?
I think the question is going to call for that hearsay that Ms. Laxley's trying to get around.
Tell what she reacted to, a local rule and objection. As long as it doesn't deal with any response to what Heather Elvis said. She can tell what she said.
Ms. Wildman, if you don't mind, tell this jury what you told Heather Elvis that night, the last thing you told her.
The last thing I said to her was to not meet Sydney, go to sleep, and we would talk about it in the morning.
And that's the last time you ever talked to her?
Yes, ma'am.
That was the last that Heather's friends or family would ever hear from her. On the 19th of December, deputies came to the Elvis household to advise Terry that his car was found at the Peachtree boat landing, a few miles from Heather's apartment. The car, a green Dodge Intrepid, belonged to Heather, Terry's daughter. It was found parked sideways, locked, with no discernible signs of a struggle. Heather's keys, wallet, and phone were not inside, and Terry drove the car from the boat ramp back home. Heather had not shown up to work, nor was she at her apartment. Unable to reach Heather, Terry filed a missing persons report with the Horry County Police Department. The community banded together to search for the missing young woman in the surrounding woods and riverbeds, but to no avail. Heather's family put up a reward for first $1,000 for information on their daughter's disappearance, which then increased to $30,000 in the following months. The first person of interest was, of course, Heather's date, the last person to see her on the night of December 17th, Stephen Schiraldi. Stephen, however, was almost immediately cleared from any suspicion. Brianna told the police about her call with Heather in the early hours of the 18th, and that she claimed to have received a call from Sydney. Police looked into Heather's phone records and discovered that she had indeed received a call, but from a payphone around 1:30 a.m. that lasted for around 5 minutes. After the call to Brianna, Heather, or at least her phone, left the apartment around 2:30 after attempting to call the payphone back with no answer. Her phone pinged at Longbeard's, a bar not far from her residence, a few minutes later. At 2:57 a.m., her phone pinged again at Augusta Plantation Drive, but then turned around and pinged once again at Longbeard's a few minutes later at 3:02 a.m. While at Longbeard's around 3:16 a.m., Heather called Sydney's cell phone but received no answer. The phone then pinged on its way back to Heather's apartment, where on the way she was able to successfully reach Sydney's cell phone at 3:17 a.m. for about 4 minutes. After the call, Heather's cell phone moved from her apartment to the Peachtree Boat Landing. There are 2 more calls made from her cell phone to Sydney's phone at 3:39 a.m. and one final time at 3:41, which was when all activity ended. Investigators began looking into Sydney and Tammy Mora and found a series of very interesting surveillance videos. Captured by CCTV at a Walmart, Sydney's black F-150 is seen entering the parking lot just after 1 a.m. on December 18th. The truck parks in a handicapped spot at the front of the store, and Sydney enters the Walmart alone. He is inside for approximately 7 minutes, during which time he purchases a pregnancy test and cigars from behind the register. After Sydney returns to his vehicle, the truck is seen exiting the parking lot of the Walmart, but is later caught again at a Kangaroo gas station. Sydney gets out of the vehicle and, you guessed it, makes the call to Heather at 1:31 a.m. from the payphone. Initially, Sydney denied having made a call to Heather, but soon changed his story when he realized he'd been cornered.
There was a phone call made to Heather that night from a payphone at the gas station on 10th Avenue.
Okay.
But we have video from that.
Okay.
Did you try calling her? Just a minute?
No.
A second? You sure?
Maybe.
Okay, how about we start again?
I did. I called her.
And what did you say?
I asked her to please leave me alone.
Sydney claimed that Heather had been leaving notes on his car at work and that he just wanted her to leave him alone. He also admits that Tammy was with him when he made the call, but she stayed inside the truck. In a police interview, Tammy denied having been at the payphone that night or having any knowledge about the call.
Some of the stuff is getting pretty mixed up and you're getting convoluted in it because there is more to the Sydney, whatever, Heather Elvis relationship.
Okay.
And before you get in a jam on anything, I wanted to make sure that you were aware of certain things.
Okay.
I know that on one of your posts you put something to the effect of that they just had like a, sex relationship in the backseat of the car kind of thing.
Okay.
It was a little bit more than that because we have like hotel records in his name that we found in her car.
Okay.
And
Well, anything can be tracked back, so if it's real, then we'll see.
well, I'm saying, you can look at it. What I'm getting at is, I want to make sure that you have the whole story, and you're trying to defend yourself and trying to protect yourself against some of these people. Because we also have a video, and I can show you that too, you're pulling it up for me, of Sydney making a call to her at 1:30 in the morning that night. And he said that you were with him in the truck.
They told me they had a video of me meeting this person too, and no one's...
No, there's no video of you meeting this person. I don't know who told you that.
Okay.
Here's the thing. When he made that call and we have him on video that night, it's a completely different story. You were in the car, you weren't in the car. He says you were in the car. I don't have any reason to believe that you were in the car. I mean, you're getting hemmed up on a lot of this stuff yourself when you're the one who's getting cheated on.
Tammy also claimed that she and her husband were in an open marriage and continued to speak on the incoming and outgoing calls the morning of Heather's disappearance.
You guys don't understand. I had boyfriends. We had an open marriage.
Okay.
That's okay. I could care less if he had sex with 100 people.
Okay, all right.
I mean, that doesn't really, it doesn't bother me. No.
Okay. So the issue was when he made the call to her that night, were you in the truck waiting when he went to the...
I was with him in the truck all night. Yes, I was there, but I don't know what the phone call, I don't know what that is. I know she called our phone.
Well, he called her, I mean, the phone records indicate that he called her from that payphone. And we have a picture of him at the payphone calling her.
Okay. I know she called there, or I know there was 2 phone calls, and I heard the girl speaking, and he never lied about those, because I was there when he told them that there were 6 phone calls made to our phone that night.
Yeah, on the ones from the cell phone. I'm talking about from the payphone. Did he tell you that he called her from the payphone?
No, he didn't tell me that.
Because, see, that's what's causing the huge problem here, because he, after not having any contact with her for quite some time, he called her that night,
Okay.
and that's very strange to us. And I'm not, I know you don't trust anybody, and rightfully so. I saw all the stuff that happened with the phone.
Do you care if I take a picture of this?
Yeah, you can take a picture of it.
And also, she just sent me the thing where, so we can look up to see if that report's real too.
But, do you understand what I'm saying, though, about the
Mhm.
phone call? He's not telling you the whole story, because he did call, and I mean, and I'm not bluffing you, because this could be proven so easily. I don't even want you to
Oh,
make a
that's, I mean,
statement
that's
out there or
fine.
anything,
That's
but
fine. If he called her, he had a reason to also.
I'm
So,
saying that
yeah.
night, you see where we're coming from on there being some reason that we have to look into the situation.
Yeah, and I want you to. I want you to look into it, but at the same time, I want the people who are making the threats to our family to go to jail for that, because they've already had strikes 6, 7, 8, 12, 15,
We're gonna do
and no
what we-
one's done anything to them. Where do you think the phone calls are coming from?
I think from the same people that are doing the searching and all that stuff, from this crew. And I mean, we're gonna get to the bottom of that today.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want anything to happen to you or to your kids, or, I don't want anything to happen to Sydney, but at the same time, I wanna make sure you're fully informed.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
That phone
I know
call-
people, if they want to try and make me mad, I'd love to see the text messages. You know, I paid to see them myself because I wanted to see what was more to it. But I didn't see anything except, you know, her begging for coffee and, you know, talking about her boyfriend, so.
Oh, yeah, on the relationship stuff. No, I mean, I just read different journals and different things that she had, nothing major, but
I think the
the
girl,
phone call is the issue that I wanted to make sure that you knew about. He says that you knew that he was calling her that night. I don't know if you knew. I mean, I might be wrong, you might have known that, but
there's things that, you know, I'm not supposed to talk about them without the lawyer present.
Sure.
And, you know, Cindy tells me everything. We don't have secrets. You know, I mean, that's the weird thing. People are like, oh my God, you're so evil. But if something's not working and you're trying to make your marriage work, and one of the agreements is, you know, see what you want to see if it feels better if you're with someone else. I'm sorry, I'm not traditional. I can't help that. I can't change that. That's just, yeah, and regardless, you know, if my husband screwed 7,342 women, my kids don't deserve to be threatened
no, absolutely not. I
ever.
agree with
That
you.
they shouldn't be brought into this. So, I mean, this girl, I can tell you just by, as an outsider looking at the Twitter, which I didn't know existed until all this went down, she's not right. She's not normal. I was 20. I partied with bands constantly. I wasn't that kind of girl. And believe me, I had the friends to make me that kind of girl, and I didn't do it. So, there's something not right with her.
Do you have any idea what he would be calling her about that?
I can't talk about that without the attorney here.
All right. Well, just as long as you know, he made the call, and there was more to things than just backseats, cars, open marriage, all that stuff. I don't care. We're looking at just from a relationship standpoint.
Right.
I'm not assuming that anything's happened to this girl. She could be running around for all.
That's what I'm thinking too. She could just be,
But
you know, he doesn't want me, say, here buddy, deal with this.
But
I've thought about that too.
The last person who talked to her,
Well, something was brought up today. Okay, the 6 phone calls made, you know, in the 3 o'clock hour. The first 2 were blocked. We're assuming the first one was her because the second one was definitely her. She spoke. Maybe, just maybe, you know, this telephone thing they're involved in was the last 4 phone calls that we did not answer. Why would she hide the first 2 and then the 4 were showing her
well,
number?
this phone number stuff didn't start happening until just recently, from the time you guys got back from your vacation.
I don't know if it did or not. I mean, the phone call that she made, I don't know for a fact that she called. The only one I heard her speaking was the second one. So the last 4 could have been the same situation where someone was prank calling you last night.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know that. I don't know that. I mean, maybe you can figure that out, but I don't know that.
Well, I guess what we'll do is we'll just deal with that other phone call at a separate time. I mean, if you have an attorney and want to come in and talk with us about it? I mean,
They've already talked to Sydney about it, and I don't know what he told them. But, I mean, that's his place. I mean, that's not me to explain that. That's his place to explain that.
Well, just as long as I needed to know before I pursued anybody for any of these phone calls to you that you did not know or were not involved in that phone call at 1:30.
I wasn't involved in a phone call at 1:30.
Or that you knew that he
No.
was calling her at 1:30 in the morning. You didn't know that? I was just trying to verify what was told to us.
Is Joseph Dorio an actual police
He is
officer?
Joe Doyle. He's a sergeant down there at the South Precinct.
Well, this is who wrote this report,
Okay.
and I would really like to get a copy of that since they were.
All right, we'll go ahead and get that.
Okay.
That's the one where he's named the suspect, you said?
Saying he's a suspect, and it was on 1/20/2014 at 1:53 a.m. Is what's showing up here. I believe that the brothers have a lot to do with the phone call stuff. That's who's been trying to hack into the systems.
Derek
Starnes? No, I don't know how you.
Derek Starnes? Do you know
Garrett Jordan.
Oh, Jordan? I thought that was his wife.
No, it's his twin brother.
Twin brother, okay. Which one was... I wanted to show you the pictures that he sent me. I need to know who these people, if one of those is Starnes.
Additional surveillance from a private residence about 1.5 miles from the Mora's home showed the Mora's truck heading in the direction of Peachtree Landing at the same time Heather's phone pinged there. Another video from a local business also shows the truck returning from Peachtree Landing after Heather's last phone call. The Moras claimed that they had nothing to do with Heather's disappearance and even claimed that they themselves had been continuously harassed by the Elvis family and community. In February of 2014, Tammy took to social media to vent her frustrations about the case, including her alleged stalking issues. She posted the following, claiming that her husband had cheated on her with a hoe, but that she couldn't care less as they'd had an open relationship and Sydney's rendezvous with Heather was purely physical. Though it does beg the question, if Tammy and Sydney were in an open relationship, why does Tammy open her post by calling her husband a cheater? If she couldn't care less about the woman her husband slept with, then why call Heather derogatory names? Tammy also claimed that parts of Heather's social media pages were missing. Sydney touched on this as well in his own Facebook post, implying some sort of conspiracy perpetrated by the police. Sydney implored his readers to report suspicious friend requests and odd activity, which he believed to be the Elvis family. In fact, he suggested in his post that the Elvis family has been behind Heather's disappearance from the get-go and that their actions would go unpunished by the police. Later that month, a search warrant was granted and the police searched the Mora's property for over 10 hours, where they found home security footage of the couple cleaning their truck within a few days of Heather's disappearance. Though the footage was not admitted into the first trial, it was allowed into the second, as the prosecution stated that the video showed more than just the cleaning of the truck, but that the pair had paid special attention to the passenger side of the vehicle, removing and disposing of items in a burn pile started by Sydney in his yard. After the search, the Moras were both arrested on charges of murder, kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and 2 counts of indecent exposure from sexually explicit images found on their phones. The police held a press conference but did not disclose any evidence they had for the murder or kidnapping charges. Additional charges were also brought against the couple for medical fraud. They were held for nearly 11 months when they finally made bail and a gag order was put in place. Afterwards, they moved to Florida by approval of the court so Sydney could take a job, but were required to wear GPS ankle monitors. To the dismay of the Elvis family, the murder charges were dropped, along with indecent exposure and Tammy's obstruction of justice charge. In June of 2016, Sydney's kidnapping trial began. The trial lasted 5 days and the jury deliberated for 7 hours, but came back unable to reach a verdict. 10 members of the jury felt that Sydney was guilty, but 2, one of which had a friendly relationship with the Mora's attorney, couldn't convict him, and the judge declared a mistrial. Sydney was, however, sentenced to 5 months in prison after breaking the gag order in place. After his release, having only served 2 months, Sydney began posting once again on social media, this time blaming Heather's father, Terry, for her disappearance. In July of 2017, the obstruction of justice case took place on the basis that Sydney lied to the police about the phone call he made from the payphone. He was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison. The following year, Tammy's trial began for the kidnapping and conspiracy to kidnap charges. One witness, Donald DeMarino, testified against his cousin, claiming that he had been shown a picture of an incapacitated Heather Elvis while he attended a family barbecue. Friends and co-workers all testified once again about the relationship that Heather had with Sydney, and Tammy was found guilty on both counts. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison for each crime, to be run concurrently. In 2019, it was Sydney's turn for a retrial. He was sentenced to 30 years as well on September 18, 2019, after the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Both Sydney and Tammy have appealed their convictions, and Sydney has gone as far as the Supreme Court, which denied his request. Though some form of justice has been served, we still have no concrete answers on the question of Heather Elvis's disappearance. She is presumed dead, and her perpetrators are behind bars. But what happened that cold December night at Peachtree Boat Landing? Did Heather's suspected pregnancy pose such a threat to Tammy and her marriage that the only option was to kill her? The Elvis family remains hopeful that their precious Heather will one day be found, though not in the way that they'd hoped. It is important to remember that although Heather may not have been innocent in the affair, she was only 20 years old, still growing and still learning. She made plenty of mistakes, with many more to make, just like all of us. But Heather will never get that chance. Her life was taken from her in a senseless act that ended up separating Tammy from her husband in the end.